If you don't like where you are, then why not continue to move forward until you're someone else or somewhere else? I feel like a lot of times our answers get taken away by our very questioning. Like, in not fully acknowledging some of our discomfort with our present moment, some of our discomfort with ourselves, we close the door to our own healing. And I mean that to say that he who thinks the journey is over is the one that's truly lost. I feel like a lot of times our experience is sort of cultivated by our ability to continue to move, continue to shed in a way, or continue to allow yourself to change in ways that truly benefit you. And sometimes that's uncomfortable, and it's the discomfort I find is not necessarily with you changing. It's you getting rid of parts of yourself that we heavily associate with. And I think that's what sort of perpetuates some of the negativity that we experience on a regular basis is the negativity that we feel about ourselves on a daily basis. I feel like a lot of our thoughts have power, and the mind is as powerful as we think it is. And I think it's important to sort of not let your guard down with yourself, but open yourself up to your own biases and how ungrounded they can be at times. I feel like the importance is sort of to consciously invest something positive into yourself and sort of allow yourself to grow in that way. And I think it does take a little bit of, not, I don't want to call it delusion, but intention. Intend to grow in a certain way or intend to have a certain outlook or a certain feeling. I feel like what we think about most is what we experience. And if we're not thinking of things like gratitude, love, and an appreciation of the self-appreciation of what is, then we're constantly going to be looking for things that we lack in our discomfort. And I think a lot of us are comfortable with a certain level of discomfort with ourselves because we think that it's a natural state, or we think that, something in the future or something in the external is going to save us from ourselves. But the thing is, we're always going to be a part of every situation we're in. You're the only thing that you can't escape. And when I say that, I don't mean that to sound dreary or pessimistic. Quite the opposite. I feel like once you recognize that, then the importance really should just be on, focusing your attention on yourself long enough to turn yourself into something good, or to embrace the good within yourself that's already there. And I feel like in that way, we open our door to more and more good things to appreciate about ourselves. And I feel like all it takes is really you being conscious with the life that you've been given. I feel like there are so many opportunities out here, so many people, places, and things that sort of aim to teach you things and teach you how to grow and teach you how to love yourself regardless. I feel like in a lot of ways, everything is a sign of, the love you should have for yourself because you're able to experience it, because you're allowing yourself to experience it in a way that contains you. And I think there's no better perspective in this world that accommodates us better than our own can. We're the only one who knows our internal workings, what we need to work on, the things that we want to change about ourselves. And we're the only ones who can truly take action on changing those things. But what I do realize is you don't change in stagnation. You can't leave anything behind if you don't move forward. And that's why I feel like it's important to embrace the idea that the journey is never ending. In terms of finding self, I feel like you constantly find yourself. You constantly renew yourself. I feel like with every experience, you're new. Everything is new in a lot of ways. I feel like to acknowledge that is to embrace the idea that, you're constantly changing. And it's about falling in love with yourself while you're changing and embracing that love for yourself regardless. Because if you can't do that and our natural state is changed, then you'll never find a way to love yourself. I feel like a lot of us love ourselves within definition, or we love ourselves within utility. But what I've realized is our value is not derived from our utility, rather our very existence. And what I mean by that is I feel like a lot of people sort of go out into the world with what they can do for others or what they can do in a sense of application or some type of job or occupation without realizing that, their value doesn't stem from that. Their value is what they give to that. And the true value is really vested in who you are. And I think if we can't acknowledge that, then our value will always be placed in things outside of us, to the extent that, we become dependent on certain things in order to feel comfortable within ourselves. And I feel like it's important to sort of embrace discomfort sometimes, but never embrace discomfort with, I guess, I want to say yourself. Not to say like your change will be super comfortable, not to say that change is a comfortable thing, but to say that in allowing yourself to be uncomfortable with certain parts of yourself that seek out change, you find comfort. I feel like peace has always been a mentality and not necessarily a place, and it's really about how much peace you can give to yourself. Peace isn't found, it's created, and you have to create it. I feel like all of these things sort of go hand in hand when it comes to our acquisition of self and our realization of who we are. Because if we stay within a certain definition of ourselves, and we don't allow ourselves to change and don't allow that definition to be somewhat malleable, then who we are is always going to remain stagnant. And how we feel and what we experience is always going to be aligned with the character that we are. I feel like in a lot of ways we attract what we are. And if we're staying the same person, then of course we're going to attract the same circumstances. It's about continuing to move forward and growing into something new, broadening our perspective to allow ourselves to change and allow ourselves to become us. Because if we can't do that at the very least for ourselves, then all we're going to be is, the person that we want to escape from the past. Like, I have previous versions of myself that I'm very happy I got away from. Like, I definitely feel like I'm at the most mature state in my life, or at the point where I most respect my mental processes and the care I have for myself. But that being said, I still recognize so much that I can change. So much that I can continue to move forward upon. And I think that's part of the beauty of life, or the beauty of being a person or individual, is the possibility of more. Once I found out there was a self to explore, then I felt like it was my responsibility to sort of explore it. And I feel like not necessarily having everybody do that or think it's important for everybody, but I think some level of self-appreciation, gratitude, self-acceptance, and letting yourself go is important. I feel like that last letting yourself go is really important. And I know I made a video like a year ago from this titled You Have to Let Yourself Go. And I think that was probably one of my most influential videos, at least to date. Because I feel like it talks about how we get so caught up in a sort of negative loop or negative outlook on our own personality that we think we aren't subject to change. We think that we aren't the agents of our own change, and we think we have to wait for something, or we have to wait for life to happen, without realizing that we are the life that we experience. And I think if I was to, bring that to the present moment and then make it new in a way, I would say letting yourself go is really just about accepting what is. Accepting what is enough to allow it to keep moving forward. I think that sometimes a lot of things get stuck because we put them behind us. And what you put behind you, you oftentimes carry on your back without knowing. And I think if we don't acknowledge the parts of ourselves that seek out change, then they'll never be able to find the change that they seek. And I think if we're seeking out change for ourselves, then it's about acknowledging the parts of yourself that seek out change. Coming face to face with it enough to recognize that it's not you. If it wants to change from what you are, then it's about accepting that it wants to change and taking the necessary steps, not in effort, but in an act of self-love to change, to develop into something new, and sort of allow yourself or grant yourself the possibility of possibility. Give yourself a chance at a chance to be better and flourish as a person. I feel like life is always filled with what you give yourself. And if we don't give ourselves any understanding or any hope as it pertains to our own experience or what we can achieve in this lifetime, then of course we're going to achieve something minuscule. And that's not to say everyone has to do a grand achievement, because it's never about what you possess. But I feel like the grandest achievement is yourself. or how much of yourself is within your possession. And I feel like I've gotten better recently, or over the years, or over time at coming into a better possession of myself. But even recently, I'm realizing that, it's not about holding on to some solid idea. It's about allowing that idea to be loose-ish, you know, be malleable at times, strong in others, but hold on to a certain intention about this character, about this person, like fill it with love so it changes and transmutes into more of a loving thing. I feel like a lot of us cast apart old parts of ourselves without filling in the vacancies with something good. And I think that's part of the reason why we're stuck in the certain stages that we are, because we're not allowing ourselves to change for the better. And when I say allowance, some might think that it's just like a backseat role, like, oh, I'm just going to let myself be and I'm going to change for the better. I don't think it's about that either. I think it's about the intention and the self-care that we have that allows us to change into something better. I feel like it's about the love that you give to yourself that's felt by you, that's experienced in the world. And I think that's where all the good is. So he who thinks the journey is over is truly lost is in a lot of ways to say that what you're not changing, you're choosing. A stuck mentality won't get you anywhere further than where you are. And that's not to call people stuck. That's to say, realize the possibility of growth, realize the potential that lays in front of you. And I feel like it's not even about, acknowledging some potential, like, oh, I could do this, I'm going to do this. Like, I don't think it takes that. I think it takes, a conscious intention, like being grateful for what you have and watching life unfold, being present enough to choose those things. Being grateful is, I feel like, a conduit. I feel like the law of vibration is a very real thing. I feel like all of the laws are very real things. And I feel like if we can vibrate on a level of gratitude or happiness or love for an extended period of time, for any period of time, our life will be more aligned with that sort of vibration. Not only because, we're aligned with it, but because if we're aligned with it, our mind is aligned with it. And if our mind is aligned with it, we're going to start to see more and more things to be grateful for, be happy for, and more things to love. And then when we look in the mirror, we'll find more stuff to love about that as well. Because I realize when it comes to ourselves, a lot of us have a very malleable, feeling of ourselves. I feel like regularly, yeah, I have a good feeling about myself, but we all have those days, we all have those moments, those periods, those seasons where we sort of overdo it. Like sometimes we look in the mirror and we'll say, oh, I look great. Sometimes you look in the mirror like, oh, I look beat today, but you're the same person. You're the same look. And it's really just a matter of your perspective on it. I feel like a lot of times, a lot of things are a matter of our perspective because we're the first person that can ever connotate anything that we are. Or at least once you get to a certain age, I'll say that. But your connotation is the most important. And I feel like if we don't give ourselves that liberty of our own affection, then we ought to lose it in every other place where we want it, where we expect it, because we can't give it to ourselves. And I feel like in that way of not giving it to yourself, you sort of depend on it from an external viewpoint. And in that way, everything becomes a representation of that lack of affection that you are getting, or lack of attention, or lack of validation, or lack of security, or lack of whatever. But I feel like in doing that, you're making everything an enemy, making everything in your experience a sort of something related to the negativity that you feel within yourself. And that's why I feel like projection is a really important thing. And I think that's why positivity and some type of good being vested in who you are is important. Because if we can do that at the very minimum, then everything that we experience, at least to some degree, will be representative of that affection, love, and positivity. We'll start to see more positive things because they'll be more aligned with it. And they'll be more reinforced by, what happens. Like, I can even talk about this morning for me. Because I'm recording this later than I usually would. But I woke up in just like a bad rut. I didn't do my affirmations this morning. I didn't do a lot of stuff that I needed to. And every time something bad happened, I sort of got in this headspace of, everything's just not going my way. This isn't going my way. And to some extent, yeah, that's true. That's a way to look at it. But is that the way that most accommodates me? Is that the way that allows me to keep moving forward? Is that the way that allows the journey to continue and allow me to grow into something better? No. Sometimes things are just challenges to our strength. And I think when we're weak, we view them as obstacles and challenges. And when we're strong, we look at them as opportunities for more strength. It's about continuing to overcome and allowing yourself to be above the nonsense that's around you, above all the negativity and all the undoing. Because at the end of the day, that doesn't help. And I talked about Pascal's gamble and you have to let yourself go. Basically saying that if you have a good outlook on the world and that makes the world better, then you win. If you have a good outlook on the world and it doesn't actually make the world better and it's just your perspective, you still win. If you have a negative outlook on the world and it makes your world worse, you lose. If you have a negative outlook on the world and it doesn't necessarily make your world worse, but your perspective, you still lose. I think it's important to just give yourself an opportunity to experience the good that's within you and the good that's within life around you. The journey is truly never over. And I feel like that's something I lost within myself, or at least an idea. There's certain curiosity and certain affection that you have to have with yourself to allow yourself to continue to develop. And I think a lot of us feel like we know ourselves to an extent and don't allow ourselves to grow because we feel like we found it. But it's about opening that back up for yourself, because there's always so much more to learn, so much more to give, so much more to be. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. A lot more on the way in this new year. But yeah, make sure you guys are taking care of yourself, letting yourself go enough to open yourself up to new possibilities, to new versions of yourself, to new life. And yeah, thank you.